Welcome back to Decoding the Flow, the podcast on creative consciousness. And today I have as a guest contemporary British painter Ruth Mulvie, whose bold, joyful, colorful works celebrate nostalgia and rituals of leisure. Ruth paintings capture everyday pleasure with vibrance and warmth. And today we're diving into how her visual language evolved and how joy becomes almost like a serious artistic statement in her work and what flow looks like inside her studio. Ruth, welcome to the Code and the Flow. I'm so happy to have you here straight from London, where you were from.
Well, I'm down on the south coast, Rika. It's so good to be here. I'm just outside, some of your listeners might know, Brighton. So if you take the train straight down from London to the south coast, we've got the brilliant seaside Regency town of Brighton, and I'm just along the coast from there.
That is fantastic. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, let me tell you a little backstory how I got connected with Ruth. Her artwork is very vibrant and very colorful, as I was mentioned. And of course, I got drawn into her work a few years ago, and I've just been following your journey and all of your incredible participations in really big art fairs and following your journey as you rise as a contemporary artist. Take us back to the very beginning. When did you know that becoming an artist was your calling?
Great question, and thank you for that introduction, Rika. I think that I always wanted to be an artist. I was saying I was an artist long before I actually was an artist, and it didn't feel unnatural to me to say it. It just felt like it was something that I did and wanted to do. And it's perhaps through the lens of becoming a mother myself and looking at my children and how other children are and behave that I probably was quite a quirky child, in that I was born in the late 70s and I grew up in the 80s, and we didn't, like, life was so different, and I spent so much of my childhood in my imagination. I used to love to play with like puppets, dolls, imaginary worlds that I would create out of plasticine. And I spent an awful amount of time drawing and painting as a child. And then as a teenager, I would do sort of quite weird things like get my paints and go out on my bike and go and like paint for the day. And it's only now I look back and I think, oh, you really, really loved it. You absolutely, that was your favorite thing to do. And if I wasn't painting, I'd be like making something else, sculpting, sewing, or not so much writing. It would always be something visual, but I would always be creating something. So it was there from an early age. And then when I went to secondary school, so that was like age 11 in the UK, I was really, really lucky in that I went to a school where we had the most amazing art teacher, a guy called Mr. Miles, and he was an incredibly special man. And sadly, he died last year. But at the funeral, I was reconnected with a lot of other people that he had taught, and loads of us have gone on to work in the creative industries like design, painting and fine art. And that really is, I think, testament to having had someone that like just recognized your talent, made you feel really special and really encouraged you. And there's some of the skills that he taught me, I very much still use in my own creative practice today. And despite actually really, really loving that and doing really well and enjoying my A levels and everything, I guess like lots of other people was kind of put off going straight to art school. And I ended up actually going to do a more conventional degree. And it was only because of somebody that I met at university who knew how much I actually wanted to be an artist and I wanted to go and paint. And she said to me, Ruth, you've got to get your portfolio together. You can't just not be doing what you really want to be doing. And her encouragement helped me to get my portfolio together. And I actually did a year at uni and then applied for art school at Glasgow School of Art, which is one of the one of the most prestigious and well-known art schools in the UK. And I remember really, really clearly my interview. We were like interviewed in this kind of strange 70s, kind of like an old factory building on the top floor. And I wore these really, really crazy blue flares and this blue like satin, like a kimono that was hand embroidered. It was completely bonkers. And I think I was probably wearing flip-flops or something, just completely wild. And I sat through the interview and I got in, and I managed to get on the painting course at Glasgow. And like, that was just such an important time for me to be able to have that achievement. So yeah, I can't imagine how different it would have been if I hadn't gone and done that.
That is so fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing it. And, I do the post-production and the pre-production of this podcast, and the way I pick and choose the people that I wanted to be here is really what you were mentioning. When you embody your creative consciousness, not only through your art, but through every step of the way in your entire life, when you really say like there's no other way to live, right?
No.
But expressing yourself. I'm very curious about the person that you were mentioning that passed away last year. What were some of the teachings that you hold to your heart up until today?
I think it was he embodied a personality, and my career hasn't always been as successful as it is now as a painter. I have done other jobs, and one of those jobs has been being a teacher. I've taught art for kids at secondary school, and one of the phrases that you're often taught is catch them being good, and you're really looking for, and I think you can do that with adults and in all aspects of your life. When you're dealing with anybody, you're always looking for the best in a person. But he really caught you being good. He would just, he would really focus in on the work that you had done, and just he could critique your work, but it was in such a gentle and positive way. And I think it's very difficult for artists to take criticism on board because it is such a personal thing, and you can really easily like deflate and put somebody off and deter them. And actually, there's no need to do that at all. You should just be focusing on their best qualities. Things like 1 point perspective. That's a like really, really simple thing, but it's a game changer in terms of composition. And I remember the 1 point perspective lesson that we had at school and what we had to draw, and then learning foreshortening as well, and how object relativity and things appear in different sizes. And I often play around with that within my work. I think about where the horizon line is, and when I'm creating a composition, I'm distorting and exaggerating in almost a cartoon style when I'm making my compositions and planning them out for the paintings. And that goes way back to that. Understanding like the colour wheel and primary and secondary colours, and how complementary and opposite colours work with each other. I'm constantly thinking about that within my work too. There are those like early things that they're the basics of like the formal elements of art, but they still come in my professional practice now.
How your art style has evolved to what it is today, maybe from when you started art school, for example, and how it evolved. Because what I see, it's almost like an excitement of escape that you
Yeah.
portray in your artwork. It's the imaginary, the real with the surreal, and I love it so much. You play around so well with the composition between adding dinosaurs, like in a pool with palm trees and people diving. It's just so incredible. Love for you to let us through your mind when evolving through what your art is today.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there, Drika, to pull apart,
Unpack.
and I'm going to try and do it in a way that makes sense, but
It
it's
was a
probably
big
going to be
question.
like all over the place. So like let's take the color out of it for a second, because the color is like quite easy to talk about in a way, because it is my visual language and it's my essence. And I think we've all got like this, it's like a very personal fingerprint, a DNA. How we see and perceive and interpret the world always comes out of us ultimately, the more and more of it we do. You can't not be who you really are when you're making your work, when you've done it so much, it always comes out. I think like when you're learning who you are as an artist, you're trying on different hats and different pastiches and different characters, and you learn the skills from observing that, but your essence always comes out ultimately. You don't even need to worry about it because it just is and it will be there. For a lot of my career, I think I was unsure about what I wanted to paint, and I knew that I loved nostalgia. I knew that I like to recall like place, memory, the dreaminess of places that I've been to or want to go to within my work. But I couldn't explain and articulate that clearly what I did in my practice. So when I had had my kids, I had been teaching for a long time and I had some coaching. And I think it's very easy when you want to make your painting your livelihood that you start to cater for the market because you want to be able to make enough money to exist from it. And, you think you should do what this market wants and this market wants, and you could be chasing that forever. So I worked with a coach after I had my kids, and he asked me what I really, really wanted and why I was doing it and how we were going to make that happen. And I think that he just happened to come along at the right time that tapped it into I was I was coming up to my late 30s and I really wanted to return to painting full time. And I was like, I know I can make this work. I know I can be good at this. What do I need to do? And so we put this plan together for me to just make a collection of 6 to 8 paintings, and they would be the best paintings that I could make. And that just gave me the freedom to really lean into painting what it was that I wanted to paint, not what anybody else wanted to, and to really establish my own. I could do anything I wanted. It didn't matter if the work sold or it didn't sold. This was going to be a group of paintings. And so I found that incredibly freeing, but I needed to have like a jumping off point to make a coherent body of work. And I started to look at the Hieronymus Bosch painting Garden of Earthly Delights, which is just this wild, like heaven on earth. It's got animals in it. It's got giraffes. It's got women like floating around in shells. It's completely crazy. And I've always put women into my paintings and water. And I was having a lot of really lucid dreams when I was having my kids about animals. They were appearing in my dreams, and it seemed to all make sense that this group of paintings would emerge, and they were called Joyland. So that is how I still work now. I take a theme and I still create a group of paintings around that theme. And those themes change, but they are within what I want to paint. And I usually create 6 to 8 paintings around the theme. And I plan them all at the beginning, and then I make them all as a collection. And that gives that group of work real coherence. So yeah, so that was my kind of first really returning back to painting to make a living from it and not doing what the market expected. And that was a game changer for me.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpack in what you said, but at the very beginning, you said something that I really resonate, which is once you establish your aesthetic, let's say,
Yeah,
it's very hard to not do it anymore because that's where you find yourself. And I'm saying that from my own experience because
yeah,
I've been working on mastering my aesthetic for the past 10 years. The very beginning, and I paint my whole life, but the very beginning was more like an experimentation. And I can see I paint so many different subjects with so many different medias. I did abstract and cats but it didn't have myself in it.
yeah,
And then once I finally was able to find my style, and now I've been doing 100 days of art practice,
yeah,
and my whole idea is to step away and go back to the very beginning of exploration. And
yeah,
I've been having a really tough time to undo what I've been doing for the past 10 years. How do you keep your aesthetic as is, but also leave space for play and experimentation in your artists?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there isn't a lot of time and space for play, and I have just been discussing that earlier today. It's something that I really need to factor in. I had a studio visit from a friend a couple of years ago, and she said she'd just done her master's, and she said one of their tutors had always said you need to have a corner of your studio which is just for play and just for experimentation at all times. I think when you have a professional practice, I'm in my studio like 9 to 5 kind of thing, and there is less time to play. The changes that happen, like I think painting as an art form itself, one of my art tutors always said to me, it's the slowest art. And I think for certainly years for me, my paintings take a long time to make. So any changes that happen within them happen quite slowly and subtly. I don't know if you feel the same with yours, but it might be like you introduce a couple of new colours, or there's a couple of new compositional decisions that you make, or you change a scale and a format, and then gradually out of that, different things start to happen. So their shifts can be like fairly small, but then when you look back over like a 10-year period, you can
Yeah.
really see the progress there.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. I really believe that natural evolved because we evolved as a
Yeah,
person. And I
exactly.
just see this as a natural progression.
Mm.
And it's clear for me when I look back in my paintings, I was a very particular way of doing my water. And now they're becoming more loose and more loose, and I've been adding more texture to it. So I love that you mentioned that natural progression because even if you don't want to, you will evolve. Your art will evolve as well with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You get older, you're less interested in certain things. On a spiritual level, you change. You might be searching for more authenticity or a different narrative or different storytelling within the work. Or you just, different things interest you. You can't escape that. Yeah.
What is, because you went to art school, as you were saying, what is something that you did not learn in art school, but you had to learn as a professional artist, working with galleries and big art fairs, having the success that you have today?
I mean, art school, I think I'm just a really late developer. And the art school was kind of, I was so immature, and I didn't come from an arty academic family. So actually, the contextual stuff about us, we had to do contextual studies as part of the degree. We had these amazing studios in the Mac building at Glasgow School of Art. So they're these huge, the painters were in the main building, these huge north-facing wooden studios. And the painters would just sort of drift in and out, and they'd drift over to the bar, and they'd go for a few drinks, and they'd sort of drift back. There was no urgency, or it was very sort of fluid, and it was just a very, very different time. And really the work that we did at art school, none of us were prepared for what being an artist would be like when we left art school. We had no idea. And I think I graduated in 2001, and at that time there was no social media at that time. I think what was that music social media site that was, I can't remember what it was called, but you had to be picked and selected by a gallery to exhibit your work. And if you weren't trendy, or you weren't selected, then you didn't really have a great deal of scope to be able to shape your career beyond that. So I think a lot of what I've done has happened very recently in the past, when, the way art is consumed and seen, and the way the online world has changed how art can be viewed, has massively helped my practice. It has got pros and cons to it, but I've had to learn a lot of things outside of art school on on the go. And I've actually had to make my own opportunities to a large extent. I think when I decided to have my first show after the Joyland show, I had some clients that had bought the painting of the tiger that I did, which was like one of my favorite paintings from that group of paintings. And we had lunch together, and the client said to me, it's so boring when you buy artwork in a gallery and it's a white gallery. It's just a square, and you have a glass of wine and you observe the work in that way. And I really started to think, well, how could I present my work in a more immersive setting and do something a bit different that would be interesting for me to create and for people to enjoy looking at the work. So I found a venue where I live where the owner had an enormous like kidney-shaped swimming pool. It's one of my favorite shaped pools, and it had belonged to an Olympic diver, and it was a really deep Art Deco pool. Along either side of the pool were these white walls, and I went to meet her and I said, can I use your pool and the outside space to have an exhibition around it? And she's a really good friend of mine now, she was like, oh yeah, that would be great, absolutely, we'll do that. So I put this show on, and it's in a part of Hove that you wouldn't know where the pool is. You have to walk down a little courtyard, and then you come underneath these trees, and there are big sculptures of the Buddhas down the lane and prayer flags, and then you open this gate into this, like, the light bounces off swimming pool water, and it's so crystal clear. And behind that gate, we exhibited all of the paintings. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was really, really good. And it was really well received. And it made me think how important the setting is for the work and to create your own opportunity.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think I follow, and it looks so incredible. Even with the type of work that you have, some artwork with pools, it's just
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I love that open mindedness. Maybe you can guide us through when you realize that you need to open yourself up for creating your own opportunities. When was the time that you saw the word as is or the gallery and how it works? Then you
Yeah.
realize that you need to create your own opportunities. There was a
Well,
point specific that you realize, well, that won't work for me. I must create my own.
yeah, there wasn't a specific point, but I'd also worked in the gallery industry for a long time, and I understand that the owners of galleries and tastemakers are really curating their own collections of the artwork that they really love, and they have their flavors and their styles and tastes. And I have worked outside of London. I'm based like in the south coast of England, but I think my audience and people that really love my work, Californians love my work, people that have lived in hot places, people that enjoy hot holidays and swimming in pools and fantasy connect with my work. And for a long time, the type of work that was very fashionable in London was more street art based and more subversive, and my work isn't like that in any way, shape or form. It's very joyful, it's very naive, and it's very childlike, and there is enough space in the market for everybody. I understand there's artists that are much better than me, and there are artists that are much worse than me. It's not really about that. Art is, we make the art and we're compelled to do it. And I think, yeah, I could have sat around waiting to be picked by a gallery and written letters and taken my work along to galleries and asked them to represent me. But I felt like I enjoyed the aspect of creating the opportunities for myself enough. And I was really driven to do that. So, and like doing some of the art fairs, like the other art fair, where you get to meet collectors face to face. I've got collectors that I have known for a long time and built really good relationships with. And those anecdotal stories that I have with people when they're interpreting my work, and they'll say to me, you need to go here, you need to go. Have you, like, for example, the first time I was in LA, the lady that I stayed with, she was a docent at the Annenberg Beach House. Do you know it, in the Palisades? It's an amazing swimming pool down there.
I've been to that place, yes, but I don't know anyone there.
So the pool has got this really beautiful Art Deco tiles in, and It's next to a museum, which is about Marion Davies, the mistress of Randolph Hearst. Anyway, I went there, and when I was staying in LA, after she said, "Oh, you've got to go down to this pool," and in the museum, I found this letter, like it was a typewriter letter, and it was a letter between Randolph Hearst and an architect, Julia Morgan, where he sets out his fantasy for Hearst Castle, which is his home up at San Simeon on the Pacific Coast Highway. And he used to entertain all of the like Hollywood set. They would fly out there for weekends and these amazing parties. And in the letter, he said, "I want lions and tigers and pumas and panthers and a zoo. I want it to be a thrill for the most blasé." And I used that letter. So I had never been to Hearst Castle at the time. And that's got the most incredible Neptune pool, which is where Lady Gaga has shot her videos. There's another pool there, which is also amazing. And I used that letter as inspiration to create a series of works around that. So yeah, one thing kind of leads to the next. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The more the conversations you have, it's like a big feedback loop. I love it.
It is so cool. And I think it is very important for any artist who wants to pursue a career as an artist to, at least for a period of time, participate in this type of fairs. It can
Yeah,
be more a regional fair or a more international fair. It doesn't matter, but you need to have that feedback and to really understand who are the people who like your work.
yeah,
And I think that because when you start painting, you don't know who's gonna like your work. You're painting for
no,
yourself. You're painting because you're discovering something, correct? But then
yeah,
you have to start doing some sort of fair when you have a direct contact with the people who are going to see your work. And that's fascinating because one of the number one knowledge and skills that I think we need to have it in order to get that feedback. It's not to answer their questions, but to flip the script and you start making questions for them. But what draws you to my work? Do you have a
yeah,
specific place in mind that you'd love to put my work on it? That way you can start understanding what are the people who loves your work? What do they do?
yeah,
And you and I,
absolutely.
we have a very specific type of work. We all do have a specific type of work. I also really love that you said if you create something, it means because there is a space for it. If you're
Yeah,
creating something, it's automatic. You have to understand that it is for somebody. Otherwise, it wouldn't
yeah,
exist because that's how the universe works, right? It's by demand. So you create something, it's automatic. So you just have to find where these people are. Where are your people?
I definitely feel that because my paintings, some of them are quite quirky and like some of them are more wild and surreal than others. And I really do believe that paintings have a person that they're destined for. And when the person finds them, you know straight away because they're just like they have a real visceral
Yeah,
reaction to the work.
yeah.
They have to have it. You know they have to they're like their eyes light up and they're like, I this is mine. I feel like I this place, I've been here, I need it, or whatever the thing is.
I
Yeah.
love it because I always say, well, if your work it still haven't sold yet because you still haven't found the person because
Yeah.
it once it exists, it is meant to go to that person.
So,
And
yeah.
like you said, it's a visceral, like they don't care about the price. They don't want
No.
discounts. They just want that painting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I met a young girl last time I was in LA and she was I can't remember how old she was, maybe like 15. And she just zoomed straight over to the paintings and she just started to talk to me like she is about words and writing and she was like, they're like a fever dream. They're just like a fever dream in Midsummer Night's Dream. The colours and she did. I was like, oh, tell me more about this play. And she talked about it and she just connected it with my work in a way that I had never really understood and seen it before. And she would have bought one if she could. I think she really liked them, but she gave me that new spin on the painting.
Yeah.
It was great.
You can even start using their own language
Yeah,
to add it to all of your marketing because you already know that art is for that specific people. This is
yeah,
actually one of the tactics for marketing when you talk to the people who loves what you have. And you can do that. Like, for example, if you write a book and if you read the reviews, you can get that specific terms from what they wrote and use it in your website or in your offers. So
Okay.
that's exactly what you said. It
Yeah.
works really well because sometimes the feedback for somebody that you have no idea who it is, it really got drawn into your work. That is the feedback that you want. So a lot of times I will even write it down what they
Yeah.
they say because they say like specific words that you as an artist wouldn't possibly even think about it because it's so ingrained with us, right?
Yeah.
That work didn't just appear. It have to grow within you for you to be able to expand and to create a painting out of it. So you don't think in terms. We just let
No.
it born and let it flow, let it be. And then that's very important. Do you have any more tips nurturing the art collector versus artist's relationship now that you've been doing really good art fairs and pretty big art fairs and you travel around the world doing
Yeah.
big art fairs? I would love for you to share your experience, and especially that one that you have to nurture and get to know the client or the art collector.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking to people and I'm just interested in people in general. I mean, even if it's not talking to them about art. So I think as painters, we're like quite a special niche because there aren't really many of us and we spend there are painters, but we're solitary, we're on our own a lot in our studios, in our heads, making our work. And we until you go and do the fairs, you make the work, you finish making it, and like, if we didn't do the fairs, you wouldn't be thinking about what happened to it afterwards. But it is so important to do that. And I think, when you go out and you meet people and then you start talking to them and you can explain to people why you do certain things, how you do certain things, like the physicality of making the paintings, how you structure them, how long it takes you to do them, why you include certain things in your work. It demystifies the work
Mm,
for people. And I think like the art world is intimidating for a lot of people because there's a lot of work that people don't understand. They
mm,
don't necessarily connect with. They need it to be explained to them to be able to interpret. And it's like a penny drop moment for people when they're like, oh, so that's why you do that, that, and that. And I think that's a really, really fun part. I think once people start to collect your work as well, they like it and they often want to collect more of it. They want to support you as an artist and to be able to follow you on your journey and see what you're doing next. My collectors have been showing up for me for years, the ones in California that come along. I absolutely love them. I love the Californian vibe, and I I I just love doing the fair there. Last year in December, I did Scope in Miami for the first time, and again, it's just talking to different people and finding out, watching how they experience and understand the work. I just get a great deal from doing that.
yeah,
I try
that's
and make it work with my creative practice as well, so that I can combine the trips of doing the fairs with gathering research material from my next group of paintings. So yeah, I always try and have fun doing that too.
yeah, I love it. I love nurturing my art collectors based, and I always say there's different personas. There is the art buyer
Yeah,
who needs your painting for that specific space or color, and there's the art collector who loves your painting, but they wants to follow your journey as an
yeah.
artist. How do you nurture these relationships outside of the art fairs?
Well, I'm in contact with them a lot, so that's the main thing. I've got my mailing list. I collect the data. I know who my customers are, and I write to them and tell them what I'm up to. And it's not like it's a one transaction
Yeah.
thing that you buy something and then we're never going to speak to each other ever again. I'm in touch with lots of them. And also, I think, social media, that's another thing. People can see what you're up to. They think th sometimes people think that's your whole life, and obviously you have I feel sometimes like I'm a prism and I have all these different aspects to my life, but I'm very serious about very serious about being a painter, and I feel very, very privileged to be able to do it. I value the people that support me along the journey so much, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for them. So yeah, I post a lot on Instagram, and I guess you do all the same kinds of things.
Yeah, just
Just showing
showing
up.
up and
Exactly.
understanding that those people who are in your world, like you mentioned, and I say this all the time, it is not just a transaction.
No,
It's an exchange of energy.
it is an exchange of energy, 100%. And it's something a painting is, I think it has a lot of energy in it, a painting,
Mm.
because it has a lot of it's like you've downloaded a lot of human experience into the painting. That sounds
Yeah.
crazy. It's not like AI isn't going to be able to make my paintings because they're slow. They take ages. In fact, it would be hard for anybody to recreate them because not many people have probably got the patience to be able
Yeah.
to. And as I get older, I understand that that's the value in my work, is that there's only a finite amount of time in which to be able to make the paintings. So, and yeah, they come with a luminosity, and they're like a historical object in a way, because they mark a period of time within which they were made.
Yeah.
It's great when you go back and see them in a collector's house and you're like, oh, there's that painting. I haven't seen it for ages.
It's almost like a painting. It's a backstage of the artist's brain.
And you remember immediately, it takes you back to what was happening at that period of life when you were making those paintings. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good.
I always ask this question for artists like us who use color as a love language for our creations. And a lot of your colors are vibrant. Do you have to have a certain mindset to be able to use these colors?
No, I don't work on my mindset. It's like my DNA in
Essence.
color.
Yeah.
But I'm not synesthetic, but I am very sensitive to color. So the colors that I wear and dress in, there are some colors I just never wear. Or colors that I would wear and I wouldn't feel happy for the whole day if I was wearing particular colors. I never wear black.
Oh,
Really.
thank you. Nobody understands. I was like, I don't wear black. Thank
I
you.
don't ever
You
wear
made me feel
orange.
seen right now.
Yeah, I used to, but
Me
I
too.
don't really anymore. My
Like an
home,
extension, we like you have no idea. People who are come to art show, they're like, you are just like your paintings. It was like, yes, because
uh,
it's all extended one to another.
I am the work, but my home is well, it's quite cluttered because I'm not a very good interior design stylist, but my house is really neutral, and I, it has to be very calm. Otherwise, I am very sensitive to my environment. I can't just chill out. There needs to be not a lot of color around me when I'm relaxing. The color decisions I make when I'm making my work are I don't paint tonally. I don't really I can paint tonally, but it's not how I paint. I paint very systematically by positioning the colours, like placing them next to each other. And, again, when I was at art school, one of the first things they teach you is they're like, you've got two yellows, two reds, two blues, and then you've got your tint and your shade, and you're going to mix all of your colours out of these yellows, reds, and blues. And actually now, like some of those colours, like I never use cadmium red when I'm painting. I never use Prussian blue. I've got a particular set of paints and tints and shades um that I'm drawn to, and I just go back to again and again within my work. And that is like, I guess it's my alphabet.
I love that.
That and that is very, it's not even conscious the way that I'm using the paint particularly.
Yeah.
It's just through experience. I mean, it is conscious that I'll place complementary colours. If I've got a lot of purple in a painting, I'll often use a lot of yellow, and I'll put like oranges next to greens. But it just is something that happens when I'm creating the painting.
Do you plan your colors ahead of time or they are intuitive?
They are intuitive. Like I'll know when I've planned the painting, I'll know if the sky is going to be like a green or a bright blue, or a pink or whatever. But the rest of the painting, I'll be working it out as I go along. I've always put like a fluorescent ground down, and nowadays, well, set the paintings out in acrylic first, and then I work over the top of them in oil paint. I cut back in, and I use a lot of negative space when I'm painting and leave the underpainting showing through, which gives them this, like, there's different levels of opacity, I suppose, in the colour, and that gives them the depth. When you really look at them, they're like tiny little, like up close, there's tiny little areas of detail, and I love those bits.
I
Yeah.
love it. All right, we are heading into our finish line, but I have two more questions for you. How does flow states feels in your body?
Yeah, I mean, we have days, don't we, where we really flow,
Yeah.
and times of the day where I don't know, like, what your working day looks like. But I get up there, I set my palette out, I've had my coffee. I usually sit down and think about what I'll be setting out that day or what I'll be working on, and like tackle the more difficult parts of the work in the morning. And I'm very sensitive to what I'm listening to. So if it's something that I really need to focus on, I just put alpha waves on in the background. If it's a part of the work where I can really switch off, I might have a podcast on or different types of music. That kind of sets the vibe. And I'm in a floating space, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just you're doing the thing,
Yeah.
and it hasn't really changed. I'm in there with my thoughts. Some people, I don't think, have many thoughts coming through their head while they're working, but I spend a lot of time thinking about things and just being in the flow, like you say. Yeah.
Are there any other routines that you have outside of your art practice that will enhance that time that you have in the studio? For example, meditation or journaling or any practice that you may have that you'd like to share?
I think I process a lot of my ideas when I'm moving and doing things. I find it really difficult to sit still. I'm one of those people that is literally like, that's why having a double hip replacement, I wasn't sure how I was going to cope with not being able to do all of the stuff that I normally do. I spend a lot of time in the gym. I do a lot of swimming. I love surfing. I'm always out on the beach with my dog. I love being in nature. I'm always thinking about what is happening next. And I love to talk to people. And I think conversation, and like I don't journal, but I spend a lot of time talking to people. And I think that's a really good way of processing ideas. And, that human interaction is so important. It's a big part of my practice.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Where do you think your ideas come from?
Well, the next group of paintings that I'm going to be working on, I'm going to explore this idea of the tarot deck. So my marriage ended like very unexpectedly a couple of years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, life is life. And it could be far worse. We all experience difficult, like difficult times. Or what the tarot would say is like a tower moment, something where life takes an unexpected or different change of direction. I think when we're experiencing a difficult time like that, we're looking for answers, and we're looking for explanations where we might never find explanations for things. And I want to use the idea of exploring some of the tarot cards, because often the animals are within my paintings are symbolic. So they might symbol strength or loyalty or fidelity within the paintings, and joy. I'm going to be looking at more depth at a selection of some of the cards and setting them out in paintings. I'm going to be exhibiting some work in Ibiza in May this year, and I am planning on a research trip out there to go gather my source material and then to plan the paintings set into these particular buildings out there. So I'm really, really,
So
really
exciting.
excited to start. I'm going to start sketching in the morning, start thinking about how the paintings are going to work. Now, the particular tarot cards I'm looking at, there's a flow between one card to the next. So, for
Mm.
example, the water in the distance of one card might flow through into another one. And I want to see how I can make that kind of work throughout the paintings. So I'm really excited.
Can't wait. So
Yes.
exciting. I have
Yeah.
one last
Exciting.
question. If you have one message to leave to this world, what would it be?
Be kind. Be kind. Leave people in a better state than they were when you started with them. Like, be compassionate and be kind to others.
Beautiful.
That would be it. Peace.
Yeah. What what would it like for people to feel when experiencing your art?
Happiness and joy. There's so much to be sad about in the world.
Yeah.
There's so where to even begin, and of course we're not making our artwork in a bubble where we don't realize and acknowledge that all of this is
Mm.
happening, but we can't stop doing what we're doing just because of the way the world is. And I think more and more people need the joy from art, especially in the dark times.
I really think that art it becomes even bigger and the
Yeah,
type of work that we do, which is
yeah,
to spread love and happiness and joy, it becomes even more necessary. So I love that you say like we can't ignore what we see in the world today, but
mm,
we still can separate ourselves. That's the only way we're going to be able to continue in creating. It's
yeah,
by separating and not identify with anything and really work in the consciousness to almost become a neutral. That's the only way I find to
yeah,
continuing the work that I do, which is to spread joy, love, and courage and creative consciousness. So it's
mm,
not forgetting that we are the only ones that have the control of our reality.
yeah, absolutely. We can't stop doing that just because the world is an ugly, unkind,
Yeah. Ruth,
difficult
thank you
place.
so
Yeah,
much. I was
thank
such a
you.
blast. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
wisdom with us. Please leave below the comments, share your love, your best takeaway. Ruth, let us know where people can find you to follow your beautiful journey and everything that you are going to create.
Oh, thanks,
And I'll
Drika.
make sure that we'll add everything to the show notes as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, just follow me online on Instagram, Ruth Mulvie, or on my website. It'd be great to see you along for the journey. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Have a good one.